Lifebrary, a podcast dedicated to your personal story. A story which is not merely a collection of events, but a powerful chronicle that encapsulates the essence of who you are. Understanding the importance of your personal story is to recognize the significance of your voice in the grand symphony of life. Let's get connected.
My name is Eric Ortiz, and I am native of Puerto Rico. I was born in Puerto Rico 68 years ago. I'll be 69 at the end of this month in August. And I was brought to Milwaukee, to the United States, when I was a baby. Grew up in Milwaukee and very poverty-stricken family, 12 kids to a good old-fashioned Catholic family. Went to the public schools, that sort of thing, and considered religious life after high school. Went to Marquette University, all those. Got a degree in Spanish and taught Spanish for 10 years, and then went into administration because I felt like I needed to do more. And as an administrator in the school system, you have less say as to where you can work than a teacher does, and that was kind of new as I went through my career. I retired at the age of 55 after putting in 33 years in the school system, and it was a wonderful career. But during all of that time, I enjoyed the arts. And I think that's one of the things that was my saving grace in my life, was that the arts were able to somehow open my eyes to what was around me and the world around me, and just all the beauty and all the people and whatnot. I'm a very emotional kind of guy, and so who knows how emotional I'll get talking about myself here. But during my college years, I had been a member of a church choir, and then all of a sudden we needed a guitarist. I went out and bought a guitar and learned how to play the guitar because somebody needed to play the guitar. And there was a Spanish choir at a church in Milwaukee. But I was also very involved with the youth there. I was on the council as a youth representative during high school and whatnot. And then in college, realized that there were youth in the parish who just had little guidance, and there were so many kids in the neighborhood, so many kids who just weren't attending, weren't going anywhere, and I knew they had a lot to offer. I ended up forming a choir, a youth choir, with some other people in the community who were very active, and I had attended some kind of a retreat, and I remember crying at the end and saying, "Please, please, please, I want this for our kids," and formed a youth choir that I co-directed for 5 years during my college years. And that was quite an experience because kids were singing Spanish, English, and gospel songs, which was really kind of cool. And that was during the time of Jimmy Carter had been elected president, and we ended up going to Washington, D.C. and singing at one of the inauguration ceremonies there, one of the parties. And that was cool. We did a lot of trips, retreats, all sorts of things. I realized during high school, through my church, and then afterwards as well, that I had all this leadership skills that I didn't know I had. Growing up in a family of 12 kids, you hardly got a chance to say anything, much less show people what you were capable of. But once my family went back to Puerto Rico, I stayed behind. I was 14 years old and I stayed in Milwaukee. 14-year-old kid trying to work his way through school and all that sort of thing. Stayed with a brother and his wife until they had a baby and needed the bedroom, and then a sister and her husband, and I was with them until I went to college. But my leadership skills developed, and so I was still involved in the church. I still involved in my community there, and directing choirs and doing all sorts of all kinds of stuff. But as a teacher also, I formed a dance troupe at the school that I was teaching, a Hispanic dance troupe. So we were doing dances from Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Spain, folk dances. It was something that I had gotten into because of Milwaukee's Holiday Folk Fair. And then I also was the drama director at my high school while I was teaching. I became the drama director, doing some interesting plays. I had never done anything like that. I had no degree, no background in drama, but I was organized. I was organized and I was creative, and so that took off. Um, my Once I had spent 10 years in the classroom, I realized it was time to do more, and so then I took a sabbatical and got my administrator's license and became a school administrator. Did that for a long time. That's where my leadership skills really came to play. Um, but after retiring, after being an administrator of several schools and master programmer, scheduling the entire school, and then teaching other programmers at other high schools how to schedule their classes and their teacher schedules and all that. I saw all that as a big puzzle, which was kind of cool. So here I was, one of these left brain, right brain kind of guys, the creative side and the analytic side, and I was kind of balanced as far as all of that was concerned, and I used all of that in my career. Thankfully, it led me to so many cool opportunities. Um, and retirement was difficult because I knew that I was leaving something that had actually formed my life. And helped me to become the person that I am today. Although I was giving back to the community as a teacher and working with kids, a lot of those kids, not a lot, but several of my students became teachers as a result of my classroom. Several of them became school administrators. Several of them went on to do all sorts of other cool things. And many of them were involved in the arts. I reconnected with somebody on Facebook just last week who suddenly her face shows up on Facebook, and she's in this podcast from Atlanta. And she's done all this stuff. She's got all these degrees, and and she saw me. She said, "Oh my gosh, Mr. Ortiz, you're watching me." And ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Ortiz. He was so instrumental in my career, and I would not be the person I am right now if it wasn't for him and what he taught me in drama and blah, blah, blah. And that's so cool to hear because you get that feedback as a teacher, but you don't get it for a long time. And I, as hard as it was to teach sometimes, as hard as it was to get through a class, as hard as it was to be a school administrator, afterwards you realize the impact you've had on hundreds of people's lives. And that's heartwarming, and that's so cool. I'm friends with so many people who were teachers that I worked with and administrators that I worked with. I'm still in touch with them. The neighborhood I live in right now, yesterday, hugging the person who took over my assistant principal position when I left one of the schools here in Milwaukee. She lives a couple of blocks away from me. My next door neighbor is another teacher who I used to work with at one of the schools. By chance, across the street and right around the corner is a gentleman who retired from the same school that I was at when we retired at the same time. And he lives right around the corner from me. And his wife is a seamstress. And she's the seamstress. She's Indian. And the Indian garb, all the formal whatever. She's the seamstress for my doctor, my primary care physician. I mean, all these connections are just amazing. My primary care physician finds out that I'm doing art now. And she says, "Oh my gosh, I got to show you my art." And she brings out her phone and says, "Look what I'm doing, what I'm doing. I needed something to relax. Look what I'm doing. I'm painting." Which was so cool because, and the reason that comes up is that I had been involved in the arts, theater, dance, music, all of that during my entire career. As a teacher as well as an administrator, doing all of that in the community. Several theater companies that I worked with, community theater, and again, directing church choirs and on and on. And the one area that I had not done anything with was visual art. And here, as a school administrator, you go into classrooms, and part of your job is to observe teachers and see what they're doing and make sure that the kids are learning properly. And you know what good teaching is. I mean, as a good teacher, you know what it is, but also as an administrator, you learn how to look for certain things and goals and what's being met, what the objective of the day is, and what the lesson plan is, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember going to an art classroom, one in particular, at Milwaukee High School of the Arts, which was my very favorite place to be an assistant principal. Oh my gosh. Walked into an art classroom, and there was absolute silence. And I was there to observe the teacher. And I could not speak to the kids. I could not speak to the teacher because in his classroom, there's absolute silence. And I thought, whoa, how do I evaluate this? How do I observe this and write up some kind of observation form? And but it was, anyway. So the art part of it, I mean, dance, theater, music, English, Spanish, math, social studies, all of those, no problem. Visual art, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I was looking at and how to help a teacher become better if they needed it. Not that they needed it, but just. And so I took a sabbatical and went back to school and got 20 grad credits in art education, just to be able to be an effective evaluator and observer in an art classroom. And boy, did I learn a lot. I learned it was all about problem solving. Problem solving affects your entire life. People wonder why artists, actors, theater people, musicians, why they're so successful. They know how to problem solve. It's all about problem solving. And when I learned that, I was like, no wonder why kids in art schools do so well, because they figure out what it takes to do a good audition. They figure out what it takes to perform properly in front of an audience. They figure out it's a problem solving thing. When you're making art, it's problem solving. How do you draw the inside of a doorknob when you've never seen it? You take it apart and you put it back together. It's problem solving. And that just opened my eyes to everything. And it changed the way I looked at classroom teachers the entire time that I was working after that. It was wonderful. But after I retired, I decided, okay, let's take this a step further. I didn't know what I was going to do 13 years ago when I retired in 2011. I started painting. It's the one area I had not explored personally in my private life. I started painting and posting things on Facebook, and I created a little page on Facebook, Erico's Gallery. Um, and people, my family, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, and is that for sale? Is that, and other people, is that for, you should keep going. I got so much feedback, I kept going, and and I ended up after through 2 3 years, well, after a year of making art, I had an exhibit. I had my own exhibit. I had something like 68 pieces of just on display. 32 sold in one weekend. 32 pieces sold. And that told me two things. One is people like my art. Second, I'm really underpriced. And so, which was fine. I wanted my art to get out there. And that kind of led to all sorts of things. So now I own an art gallery. I own an art gallery in West Allis, Wisconsin called Inspiration Studios. And it's not just an art gallery. I bought a funeral home and turned it into an art gallery and a little black box theater. So it connects all the arts that I've been involved in. I've had theater productions there like crazy. I've directed, I've acted, I've produced. I have art exhibits there that change out once a month. I've had some performances by flamenco dancers and from other dance troupes. I've had guitarists come and do concerts, guitar concerts, classical guitar concerts, guys who were doing concerts in Singapore and England, and they're doing things here at my little gallery, my little studio, my little theater in West Allis. So that's been cool, and it's one of the things that continues to inspire me as I make art myself. Um, I'm now encouraged by other art groups who come into my building to exhibit their art and say, "Why are you not part of this or that, whatever?" So when I finish this lovely podcast, I'm driving to Kenosha to pick up 5 pieces of art that are at the Anderson Gallery in Kenosha, where I've never exhibited before, had never been to before. And suddenly I've got art pieces down there that people are falling in love with. And so, and even the directors of the place, the gallery directors said, "Oh, you got to bring me more of these. You got," and they asked me to bring all these little 6x6 paintings that I had done, Picasso-inspired paintings with the faces are kind of twisted and lopsided and whatnot. And they said, "Oh, we don't have anything like this in our gift shop. You need to bring us some." So they now have, well, they had 18 pieces in there. And so today I'll find out if any of them sold. If not, that's fine. But this is my life. I now own Inspiration Studios in West Allis. It is a theater and art gallery. I'm constantly remodeling and rebuilding pieces of it. It's been, I got it I got the building at a very, very reasonable price, and I've probably um, put 3, 4 times as much into it cost-wise, and blood, sweat, and tears, and physical injuries and surgeries and all that. But it's now what I do, and I'm called upon by the city of West Dallas to be part of committees and to look at murals and building murals on the walls and helping to fund those things and helping to guide other artists to do more than what they're doing. It's been cool. It's a good life. Um, I certainly have my ups and downs. I have to certainly think about the fact that I'm not going to be around forever, and but I think I'm leaving kind of a cool legacy behind. Not that I'm ready to die tomorrow, but I I love what I have, and people love what I have. People walk into my building, they sit down, they come to one of those paint and sip type things, or they come to a theater production, or they come to just observe the art that's on the walls, and they sit down or make art because I have the events for people to make art, and they say, "Wow, this feels like home." I've got a friend who's an artist, a performer rather, who had not been in any theater productions I hadn't seen him for about 20 years or so. And then he came to an audition in my building about 10 years ago when I first opened the place and immediately fell in love with the place. He has been now an actor there in many, many theater productions. He's directed, he's produced, and he keeps coming back. And whenever I call on him for anything, any project there, he's there. He loves the building, and he says it's his second home, which is really cool. But that's what I've got going on in lovely little West Dallas, where I've been welcomed with open arms. I know that I tell people the mayor loves me. He loves what I do for the city. He calls on me for many committees whenever it's art related. If somebody comes to him with an art related project, he says, "Go talk to Erico." During COVID, there was a band that needed a place to rehearse because they couldn't rehearse anywhere. They couldn't perform anywhere. Go talk to Erico. And I set them up in my building. They took over the living room and dining room of the upstairs of the funeral home. There was a funeral home, living quarters, and that became their studio. And from there, they projected, live streamed to the bars in West Dallas during COVID. So people could listen to live music even though the band wasn't standing right in front of them. It was live. It was very cool. It was Paddy Grass, wonderful, wonderful Irish band. And the friend and the director and I have become really good friends. And that's what happens. I just directed a play called The Test of Time, written 25 years ago by two gentlemen who grew up in this area. Um, they they met in first grade, went through school together, graduated together, had an apartment together for a while, formed a business together, had some kind of parting of ways, some disagreement. The business dissolved. They parted ways. But in the meantime, they had written a play with songs, their own original music, and their uh, their script. Act one was all about these two guys who met in grade school, grew up together, wrote music together, and whatnot, and then had a parting of ways. And they never did Act two, and it was never performed. And they hadn't seen each other for 15 years. And suddenly one day, one of the two walked into was buying groceries at a place that he never goes to, and the other one was there. He hadn't seen him in 15 years. They rekindled the friendship. This was about 5 years ago. And at one point said, "Hey, remember that play that we wrote? You still have a copy of it?" "Yep, I've got it in my storage locker." Pulled it out. They looked at it. "Should we write Act two?" And they did. And I ended up directing it. They came to me in June, or the one guy came to me in June. I fell in love with the story. I watched them rehearse. I thought it was the coolest thing because Act Two was the culmination, the coming together of these friends who had grown up together and had a parting of ways. And now um, it was wonderful. The songs are great. The storyline is good, and it kind of predicted what their life was going to be like. And that's what I do now. I inspire people to bring those projects to me because I take them on. We produce the play, I directed it. I gave them lighting. We did all kinds of cool stuff. They were thrilled that I was so interested in it. And this little project that they wanted to do just for friends and family, I said, no, 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 you got to let me open this to the community. You've got to. And so we did. And my building is very small, little intimate little theater. And they allowed me to invite others to see it. This is very personal to them, based a lot on their life, and with a few embellishments, but mostly based on their life. And so we had just under 20 people, 18 people on Saturday night. They had only wanted one performance. I said, no, no, we got to do 18 people, and those 18 people went home, called people, and the next day had 30 people in the house, and it was wonderful. And it's called The Test of Time. You want to look it up? Look it up. It's on YouTube. The Test of Time. And I'm so proud of what we did. In 1 month, we put this thing together, and it's what I do. It's what I do. And those two guys have become wonderful friends as well. But that's what my life is all about. I'm all about the arts. I live the arts. I love the arts. I do music, dance, theater, everything. And it's what my building has become. Inspiration Studios in West Allis has become an arts center with artists who have their studios there. I've got a magician upstairs in one of the rooms. He does magic, films it. I've got several artists and a counseling center there too. So look it up, Inspiration Studios. My name's Eric Ortiz, and I hope you do more than what you're doing. That's what I always try to do. You can always do more. Thank you.